Love the collab with Jay Cutler. Have you spoke with Jay about coming out to your gym and doing a strongman style workout? The answer to this is yes. We actually talked about it when I was out in Las Vegas with him. I said it'd be really cool because at that point we were in the process of building this gym, and I would love to have him out to do the podcast with me, to train in the gym, just to have fun. Jay and I connected very, very well when I was out there. I've known him for years, and it was fun to do that with him. I would love to have him come out as a guest here as well. Will you always have an open class at the Shaw Classic going forward, or was this year just a one-time thing? This year, we just decided to bring the open class to the Shaw Classic to give both men and women that are trying to come up and make a name for themselves an opportunity. So this is really a test year. It was, something that people had kind of reached out about and said, hey, are you going to expand the Shaw Classic to give other athletes an opportunity? And that is exactly what we are trying to do. Right now, it is just for this year, and we are going to see how it goes, right? Testing things out is the only way to really find out how successful they're going to be and how the athletes are going to embrace them. So far, I feel like the positive feedback has been very, very good. So I'm hoping that these athletes that qualified to come here can come in, perform, put on a show, and it turns into something that we can do every single year, and it's even more successful. But right now, it is just a test for this year, and I'm hoping it will be successful. How do you think a tie should be broken in a strongman contest? Count back like it used to be, whoever wins the last event like it is now, or have a separate tiebreaker event at the end? If so, what event would you choose? So in my opinion, to break a tie, you should have to do something else physically to break that tie. I'm not a fan of the count back. I never have been. I'm also definitely not a fan of whoever wins the last event and, world's strongest man, it's a stone. So whoever wins the stones wins the contest. I don't agree with that either. So, for example, at the Shaw Classic, last year we had a tiebreaker in place where if two athletes would have tied, since you're doing the stones last in the contest, we were going to bring out a yoke, and it was going to be a back and forth with the last stone. So essentially, one athlete would load it over the yoke, the other one would load it back until somebody failed. So you would do that right at that moment. As soon as you figured out there was a tie, you would bring out the yoke, you would bring out the stone, and you would have it out right there to figure out who the winner is. So I think that is the best way to settle a tie in a strongman contest. I don't think that the new rule is great, and I also don't really agree with doing a count back. I understand that if time constraints are there, that you have to kind of figure out something. But I feel like if you do have a tie, that's great TV, it's great video, it's very dramatic, and as an athlete, you get to prove it right at that moment, who's going to win and who's going to lose. So that's how I think it should be done, and that's how we will do it always at the Shaw Classic. We'll never do a count back, and we'll never do, looking at the last event for who wins overall. We will always have some type of tiebreaker in place if that were to occur. What event from strongman history would you most like to see return for World's Strongest Man or the Shaw Classic? So there's a lot of really cool events in the history of strongman that were done. Some of them over the top, some of them were safe, some of them were not safe. And I think nowadays you need to think about the health and safety of the athletes first and foremost, but putting on a show for the fans and making it fun for the athletes is something that I very strongly believe in. So, for example, with the Shaw Classic this year, we're doing a car leg press. So this is just a concept that I wanted to do. I actually kind of got the idea from the strongest man in history when we were challenged with lifting a car vertically. And I thought at that time it would be a lot safer and better if you were to have some type of car set up on top of a leg press where you could, be in more control of the car being lifted. And so that's kind of where the idea was born. And I said, you know what, this is something that we're going to invest in and try to make come to life. So, I can't say that that's necessarily an event from old school strongman that we're trying to bring back to life. I mean, they have done a leg press at World's Strongest Man before, but to my knowledge, it's never been done with a car on top of it. So I'm gonna keep trying to come up with fun events that are fun for the fans, fun for the athletes to go after, and they are kind of expensive to do, but if you're going to put on a great contest, you should invest in the equipment and make it a show that's fun. So I don't know what exactly we'll do next. We'll have to think about that one. But, whatever we do, I'm going to try to make it fun. I'm going to try to make it entertaining and make it awesome. What is the heaviest weight you ever lifted? So the heaviest weight that I have ever lifted, it's one of two lifts. One would be from The Strongest Man in History, the TV show, where we did it was essentially a big yoke that was loaded with barrels, and we had to climb up on top of this platform to do the lift. And that lift, gosh, I'm going to forget the final weight, but it was over 2,000 pounds just in that lift that I had to lift up. Nick and I were kind of going back and forth, and I had to get that last lift. I think it was 2,100, maybe 2,150 pounds. I'd have to go back and look. All I know is it was heavy, so that was over 2,000 pounds. The other lift that I did that was extremely heavy like that was I did a hip and thigh lift at Fortissimus, which is a contest that was held way back in 2009 in Canada, and it was basically that was more of a leverage type lift where you put it on your upper back and then put your hands on top of your legs, and you were kind of squatting and pushing to lift the weight up, and that was extremely heavy. And again, somewhere I think that might have been in the upper 2,000 pounds to 3,000 pounds, but that was more of a leverage lift where I don't know if that was true full weight that was being lifted or just being leveraged. So I would probably go with the lift on the History Channel show. That was definitely very, very heavy. What is your best log lift to date? So my best log to date in training, so definitely not in a contest, but in training I did 470 pounds, and that day was a great day on log. I felt very good and kind of stopped there. I felt like I had more in the tank leading up to that. Was for the Arnold Classic I was training for. So I had a log for reps. So I wasn't necessarily training for a log for mass, but I went above what the rep weight was going to be. So I would say that that's probably, outside of a contest, the best log press that I have done to date. And in contest, I think I did in the Arnold, they did change the weights around, but I believe it was 450, so the Austrian oak, when they brought it in. One year I got that for 2 reps in the Arnold. It is, if I'm remembering correctly, I've done it so many times, but I believe that I did 2, and that might have been the same year in that lead up. My log was just going really, really good in that prep leading up to that contest. So, 470, and I don't know what I could have potentially got that day, but I definitely felt like there was a little bit more in the tank. How did you meet Shaq? So the time that I met Shaquille O'Neal was actually at the Olympia. So it was during the night show, and him and I were seated in the front row, and the announcer was actually kind of giving us a hard time, saying we were the 2 biggest bodybuilding fans in attendance, which I think was probably true out of everybody in the audience. But it was pretty fun because he walked down as he was leaving. I think he had to leave for something early, but he leaned over and just shook my hand and said hi. And he said that he was a big fan of mine, which kind of blew me away because I grew up literally with the life-size kind of cardboard cutout of Shaquille O'Neal. I had that in my room. I had, magazines of, different things about him because I could relate to him in the fact that, he was a big kid, he had big shoes, and I always had a hard time finding clothes and shoes and things like that growing up. So I related to him, and then of course I played basketball growing up. So, somebody for me to kind of look at that was a big guy that was, playing basketball and, kind of larger than life. So I related to him in that way for sure. But for him to say that he was a fan of mine really blew me away, and that's a moment that I'll never forget for sure. What are your thoughts after this year's World's Strongest Man? How do you feel about the competition going into next year? So my thoughts on World's Strongest Man, I ended up in 4th place this year. Definitely not what I had trained for and what I prepare for. You guys know that about me. I trained to go in and win, and I showed up. I did the best that I could do and ended up in 4th place this year. And that's really, the long and short of the story. As far as, my thoughts on World's Strongest Man, I think there's a lot that I could probably say about the contest this year. But, me personally, again, you're asking my thoughts. I did think that in some of the events, the weights were a little bit too light, especially in the final, but definitely in the qualifier as well. I think that that's something that probably needs to be looked at, especially, with World's Strongest Man. It should be the pinnacle. It should be the top contest, the biggest, heaviest. You're finding out who the world's strongest man is. So, in my opinion, that's how it should be run. But, again, I'm not in a position to make those calls. I do think that there's some stuff, and you're asking about, my thoughts about the competition going forward. I definitely think there's some stuff that probably needs to be addressed at World's Strongest Man, that maybe needs to be looked at, changed, that type of thing. And I'm simply saying that from a position of wanting World's Strongest Man to be that top contest, to be the pinnacle in strongman. It's a title that everybody has always wanted to win, and so for me, I would love to do whatever I could to help the contest be that, so everybody's walking away and saying, wow, this was amazing, and it was incredible, and all of the inner workings are the way they should be. So that's really my thoughts on World's Strongest Man, obviously in a nutshell. But it's something that I had to fight through a lot, before leading up to World's Strongest Man, at World's Strongest Man, and even after World's Strongest Man. So, I'm proud of my effort. I'm proud of, getting to the contest and my performance. I can certainly go back and take the positives, take away the things that I need to work on, just like normal. But, overall, it's always a pleasure to compete with, all of the different guys there, that show up. And that's one of the parts of World's Strongest Man that I have always really loved, is the competition aspect. Getting to see, all of the different competitors, over the years and compete against them and have that camaraderie. That's been really fun, for sure, at World's Strongest Man. And the fans make it great, right? Like the support that I receive is incredible, both online and at the contest, and that's something that has definitely kept me motivated and driven and wanting to come back over all these years is the fans. So I try to focus on those things a lot at World's Strongest Man and have that takeaway for sure. But yeah, those are my thoughts kind of in a nutshell with World's Strongest Man, and hopefully that answers your question.